My brother set our mother's dented mixing bowl on my kitchen table and told me it was all he had saved from the storage auction I had caused. He said I had missed one payment, and everything else, her cedar recipe box, the silver serving set, the quilts she had pieced after Dad died, was gone. I looked at the bowl, then at Dean, and wondered why a paid account would have been auctioned at all. I had opened my banking app before he finished blaming me. The storage payment was there, in green, posted 8 days before it was due. "I'm calling Prairie Lock," I said. Dean reached for his coat. "Ruth, it already happened. Calling won't bring anything back. I put the phone on speaker anyway." The manager asked for my unit number and security phrase. Then she said, carefully, "Your account is current. There has been no default and no sale on Unit 214. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then she added, "I do see a gate entry from a temporary code at 6:14 one morning. Does D57 mean anything to you?" It did. D was for Dean. 57 was his age. That was the moment the story changed. I was no longer wondering how I had lost my mother's things. I was wondering why my brother needed me to believe that I had. 6 weeks earlier, our mother, Evelyn Bell, had died at 86 in the same little ranch house where Dean and I had grown up. She did not leave money worth fighting over. After the funeral expenses and the balance on the roof, there was enough in her checking account to settle the ordinary bills and perhaps give each of us a modest amount. What she left in abundance were objects that looked worthless until you knew the hands that had used them. There was a blue enamel roasting pan with a pale oval worn through the bottom, a biscuit cutter made from an old tomato juice can, 4 quilts, none of them square. The stainless steel mixing bowl on my table had a dent from the Christmas Dean tried to make divinity candy at 14 and dropped it when the syrup burned his thumb. The cedar recipe box mattered most to me. Mom had bought it at a church bazaar in 1969. One brass corner had come loose years later, and she and I repaired it with 2 tiny screws that did not match. Inside were cards in her handwriting, but they were more than instructions. Next to the apple cake she had written, "Use the tart ones. Dean will complain, then eat 2 pieces." Beside my father's favorite stew. "Ruth adds too much pepper when she is worried." Dean called those notes clutter. He was not cruel when we cleaned out the house. That would have been easier to recognize. He was efficient. He moved from room to room with a black marker writing keep, donate, or sell on strips of painter's tape. He had been running a small resale business from his garage for 2 years, mostly tools, lamps, and old furniture. He knew what people would pay for. "We can't hold a museum for every chipped plate," he told me. "We don't have to," I said. "We only have to know what we're deciding." For 32 years I had managed a public school cafeteria. My job had taught me that memory was not an inventory. If 180 cartons of milk arrived, you counted them before the driver left. If a freezer failed, you wrote down the temperature and the time. You did not accuse anyone. You made the facts visible. So I photographed each item before we packed it. I numbered the boxes and made a simple spreadsheet: object, condition, proposed destination, final decision. Paige, Dean's 31-year-old daughter, sat on the living room floor and read labels aloud while I typed. "Cedar recipe box," she said. "1 repaired brass corner." "Family review," I answered. Dean looked over her shoulder. "Put an estimated value of 75. "It isn't for sale yet. Everything has a value, Ruth." "A price and a value aren't always the same thing." Paige glanced between us, then photographed the box from the side where the mismatched screws showed. I uploaded the inventory to a folder all 3 of us could open. We rented Unit 214 at Prairie Lock because the house had to be cleared before closing. The lease was in my name. I set up automatic payment from my account. Dean was coordinating the estate paperwork, so I agreed that he should have access while we sorted things. At the storage office, the clerk gave me a permanent code and made Dean a separate temporary one. D57. She explained that separate codes helped the facility tell which authorized person had entered if there was ever a question. That was Prairie Lock's own system, not some promise that every storage place made. Dean slid the little code card into his wallet. "We can cancel that after today," I said. "I may need to bring the shelving over." I let it go. That was my first mistake. Not trusting him exactly, but treating a small discomfort as if naming it would be less polite than living with it. The next afternoon we met with the lawyer handling Mom's estate. Ms. Alvarez was a quiet woman with silver frames and a desk almost empty enough to make Dean nervous. She said the property list did not need to be elegant, but it did need to reconcile before the remaining assets were divided. Dean gave her a round estimate for the household goods. $6,000 total, he said. I looked at him. Based on what? Experience, Ms. Alvarez turned to me. Do you have the item list? A working one. Keep working it. No final distribution until the siblings agree on what came in, what went out, and where. Dean smiled as though she had said something tedious instead of important. For the next 3 weeks, life became quiet in the way life sometimes does after a funeral. The calls stop, the casseroles stop arriving. You discover grief is not a ceremony, but 100 small moments when you reach for a person who is no longer there. I visited the unit twice. The first time I brought 2 boxes of photo albums. The second time I measured Mom's maple table because Paige thought it might fit in her apartment. I locked the roll-up door, pulled it twice, and wrote the visit date in my notebook. Then Dean came to my kitchen with the mixing bowl. After Prairie Lock told us there had been no sale, he did not look surprised. He looked irritated. "Maybe she doesn't have the full file in front of her," he said. The manager was still on speaker. "I have the account history in front of me, sir." Dean's face tightened. I thanked her and said I would come by that afternoon. When the call ended, he picked up his keys. "You always do this," he said. "Do what?" "Turn everything into a report. You told me Mom's things were auctioned because I failed to pay. The account is paid. I was trying to spare you the details." "Then give me the details." He opened the door. "Call me when you're ready to talk like family." The sentence stayed with me because it was so carefully built. In Dean's version, family meant accepting his explanation before checking it. Anything else was disloyalty. My cousin Lorna came with me to Prairie Lock. I asked her because she had known us since childhood, and because she was the one person in the family who could sit quietly without mistaking silence for agreement. The manager, Marisol, printed a summary of my account. She confirmed in writing what she had already told me. The rent was current. There had been no default notice, no lockout, and no sale record. She explained only what I needed to make my next decision. In Iowa, an operator does not simply sell a paid unit after one supposed missed payment. A lien sale follows a period of default and notices. None of that existed on my account. "Can you tell me who used D57? I asked. "I can show you that the code assigned on your authorization was used," she said. "I can't decide what that means in a family dispute." That distinction mattered. Marisol was not a witness to a theft, and a gate entry was not proof of what anyone carried out. Under Prairie Lock's own records policy, she could document events on my account. She could not declare my brother guilty. The summary showed D57 entering at 6:14 on a Tuesday morning and leaving 41 minutes later. That was 23 days before Dean brought me the bowl and 4 days after my last visit. Lorna tapped the time with one finger. "Did he tell you he was going?" "No." "Are you going to call him?" "Not yet." That answer surprised both of us. We went to Unit 214. The cheap folding chairs were still there. So was a particle board bookcase with a water stain shaped like Florida. The empty television cabinet was shoved against the back wall, but the cedar box was gone. The silver serving set was gone. 2 quilts, Dad's bench vise, Mom's small carnival glass bowl, and the maple table leaf were gone. The main table remained. It was not the emptiness of an auction unit, it was selection. Lorna wanted to drive straight to Dean's house. I understood the impulse. Anger likes a destination. "If we go now," I said, "he'll tell us we remembered wrong. We have your list. Then we use it before we use our voices." At my kitchen table, we opened the shared inventory. Every missing object had been photographed. I marked 12 lines in yellow and left the others white. The cedar box photograph stopped me. I could see Mom's thumb along the lid and my own hand holding the repaired corner toward the camera. In the file history, Dean had opened that image the evening before D57 was used. That did not prove he had taken it. It proved he knew exactly what it looked like and where it had been packed. For the first time, I let myself consider that my brother had not made a mistake. He had constructed an explanation. Why an auction? Because auctions scatter things. Buyers are anonymous. Once a unit is gone, a grieving sister may decide there is no point asking which object went where. Most of all, an auction placed the blame on me. The shame was supposed to keep me from making one phone call. I called Marisol again and asked whether Prairie Lock had any exterior image from the code window. She said Prairie Lock's own policy kept exterior video for only a limited period, and that the relevant window was close to being overwritten. She could preserve the narrow segment while the account dispute was documented, but she warned me it might show nothing more than vehicles entering and leaving. "That's enough," I said. "Please preserve only that window. I did not ask for a week of footage. I did not ask to see other customers. I did not need a camera to solve the story for me. I needed to keep one ordinary fact from disappearing while I decided what to do." The still image showed a blue pickup leaving the property. The driver's face was hidden by the windshield glare. A gray tarp covered the bed. I had seen that truck in Dean's driveway, but it did not belong to him. It belonged to Rick Donnelly, a friend of our family who lived 3 streets from Mom's old house. Lorna suggested we drive by Dean's garage and look through the windows. "No," I said. "What if the things are in there? Then they'll still be in there without us trespassing." I called Rick. I told him I was reconciling the estate property and asked whether Dean had borrowed his truck on that Tuesday. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "Early. Said he was moving metal shelving before traffic picked up. Brought it back before lunch." "Did you help him load?" "No." "Ruth, is something wrong?" "I'm trying to find that out." I wrote down exactly what he had said, nothing more. That evening, Dean called me. "Why are you digging through security records?" I had not told him about the image. Marisol had not called him. She later confirmed that. To this day, I do not know whether Rick called or whether Dean simply understood that his first story was collapsing. "I'm reconciling Mom's inventory," I said. "You're making this ugly. The things are missing. The auction didn't happen. It is already ugly. I found the bowl after the sale." That was a new version. "Where?" "A buyer contacted me." "What buyer?" "I don't have his information." "How did he have yours?" Dean went quiet. Then he said, "You hear yourself, don't you? Interrogating your own brother over old kitchen junk?" There are insults meant to wound, and there are insults meant to reduce the value of what someone has done. Old kitchen junk was not about the objects. It was permission he was trying to write for himself. "Send Ms. Alvarez an itemized account by Friday," I said, "including whatever you say the buyer returned." "You think a spreadsheet makes you honest?" "No, I think honesty survives a spreadsheet." He hung up. 2 mornings later, Paige asked to meet me at a coffee shop near her apartment. When I arrived, she had not ordered anything. She was staring at the photograph of the cedar box that I had sent her. "I think I saw this last week," she said. "Where?" "On Dad's laptop. He was making listings. He asked me whether 75 was too much for an estate recipe box." The amount landed harder than I expected. Not because it was large, but because it was the exact number he had spoken over Paige's shoulder in Mom's living room. Did you see the actual box? No, just pictures. Do you still have them? Paige rubbed both hands over her face. He sends drafts to me because I used to help with his resale page. I told him months ago I didn't want to do it anymore. He kept sending them. You don't have to give me anything today. She looked up. If I don't, I'm helping him. No, he put you in the middle. That was his choice. What you do next is yours. It would have been easy to make Paige prove her loyalty to me by betraying her father in one dramatic gesture. That would only have repeated Dean's definition of family. So I told her what I knew, what I did not know, and what the lawyer had asked us to reconcile. Paige opened her messages. The listing for the recipe box was still in her drafts. The first photograph showed the mismatched screws in the brass corner. In the glossy lid, faint but visible, was the reflection of red metal shelving from Dean's garage. There were 6 other drafts: the carnival glass bowl, the bench vise, the silver set, 2 quilts, and the maple leaf described as solid vintage lumber. The dates fell between the D57 entry and the morning Dean brought me the mixing bowl. We saved the public-facing images and the drafts Paige had received. We did not break into his account. We did not demand private records from the marketplace. The listing was a clue because the object was distinctive and because Dean had voluntarily sent the drafts to his adult daughter. He told me these came from a clean-out, Paige said. He didn't say Grandma's clean-out. Would it have changed what you did? Yes, I believed her. Believing her did not mean asking her to carry the rest for me. Ms. Alvarez may ask how you received these. I said, you can answer or you can decline. I won't surprise you. Paige nodded. I'll answer. That was the first brave thing anyone did in this story. Checking a bank account was habit. Preserving a record was caution. Paige had to choose truth while knowing it would cost her something with her father. Ms. Alvarez helped me arrange the material by date. She was careful with her words. The paid account and facility record established there was no operator sale, she said. The code and truck support access. The inventory and listing support identity and control. We should not claim more than each item proves. What about the buyers? Some property may not be recoverable. Do not contact strangers or promise the family that every object will come home. Our immediate purpose is an accurate estate accounting. That was not the cinematic answer. It was the useful one. We prepared 7 pages. Page 1 showed the storage payment. Page 2 showed the absence of a default or sale. Page 3 showed D57 and its assigned user. Page 4 showed the truck window and Rick's written confirmation that Dean had borrowed it. Page 5 showed the inventory photographs. Page 6 showed the listing drafts. Page 7 compared Dean's $6,000 round estimate with the objects and prices he had omitted. There was no surprise inheritance, no police officer waiting behind a door, no stranger arriving with perfect knowledge. There were only choices, dates, and objects Dean had believed were too ordinary to defend. Before the accounting meeting, Dean came to Paige's apartment carrying the cedar box. I was there because Paige had asked me to be. The moment he saw me, he stopped in the doorway. This is between me and my daughter. Paige stood beside me. You brought Aunt Ruth's box. It belongs to the estate. Then why was it in your garage? Dean looked at me. You can have it back if you stop this performance. He held out the box, as if returning it were generosity. I took it because it belonged with the estate, not because I accepted the bargain. The brass corner was cold under my thumb. Returning one thing doesn't erase how it left, I said. I rescued it. For the auction that never happened? His eyes moved to Paige. You showed her. Paige's voice shook, but it did not disappear. You showed me first. Dean put 3 more items inside the doorway. The carnival glass bowl, the folded red quilt, and Dad's vise wrapped in an old towel. Then he left. When I opened the cedar box, every handwritten recipe card was gone. For one ugly second, I wanted to run after him. Not to hurt him, to tear open every drawer in his garage until I found my mother's handwriting. Instead, I photographed the empty box and called Ms. Alvarez. "Add one line," I said. "Box returned. Contents missing." At the accounting meeting, Dean sat across from me. Paige sat at the end of the table, not beside either of us. Lorna was there because she had inspected the unit with me. Ms. Alvarez placed the 7 pages between us. Dean began before she finished explaining the purpose. "I already told Ruth there was a mix-up with the sale," Ms. Alvarez pointed to the facility letter. "There was no sale." "Then someone at the facility must have let things go." She pointed to D57. "That proves I went in. Ruth authorized me." "It proves access," I said, "not removal." He looked almost relieved that I had admitted the limit. Then Ms. Alvarez turned to the truck image and Rick's confirmation. Dean said he had moved shelving. She turned to the inventory showing which items were absent. He said the list was only Ruth's memory. She turned to the photographs he had opened before the entry. Finally, Paige placed printed copies of the drafts on the table. "You sent these to me," she said. "I saved the original messages." Dean did not explode. He seemed to become smaller inside his jacket. "I was going to put the money back." That sentence was the first true one. The resale business had been losing money for months. Dean had paid storage fees, bought inventory that did not move, and hidden credit card balances from Paige. He convinced himself Mom's things were available because he was the one doing the estate work. He chose objects he could sell quickly, borrowed Rick's truck, and used the code he had kept. The auction story came later, when he realized the missing items would be noticed. He put the mixing bowl on my table because it was recognizable and nearly worthless to a buyer. He thought one rescued object would make the rest of the lie feel detailed. "And the recipe cards?" I asked. He stared at the papers. "I used them in the photos. Buyers like a story." The room changed for me then. Selling the box was theft from the estate. Using Mom's notes as sales props felt like something else. A willingness to turn her voice into decoration while telling me it was clutter. "Where are they?" "In a file envelope at the garage." "All of them?" "Yes." "Paige will collect them with Lorna. You will not be alone with either of them, and I will not enter your property." Dean looked at Ms. Alvarez as if she might soften the boundary. She did not. We did not solve everything that afternoon. 2 quilts and the silver set had already been sold. The maple leaf had been cut into smaller boards. Some proceeds had gone to Dean's card balance, and some were still in his resale account. No legal process could put cut wood back into a table leaf. But the family record changed in that room. Dean crossed out "storage auction loss" on his accounting and wrote "property removed and sold by personal representative without sibling approval." His hand stopped twice. He signed beneath it. He agreed to relinquish control of the estate accounting. He returned every unsold object, transferred the remaining traceable proceeds, and signed a monthly restitution schedule for the documented sales. The amount did not pretend every memory had a market price. It accounted for money and property because those were the things an accounting could honestly hold. I did not ask for his ruin. I asked that he no longer control the facts. Ms. Alvarez sent the corrected inventory to the same adult relatives who had heard that I missed the payment. Lorna added one sentence: "Ruth's account was current and no auction occurred." That visible correction mattered more than I expected. Shame had entered the family as a public story. It needed to leave the same way. Dean apologized before we left. "I'm sorry I took the things," he said. "Are you sorry you blamed me?" He looked at the table. "Yes." "Then understand this. An apology does not restore your access. You will have no key, no storage code, and no authority over family property. If payments stop, Ms. Alvarez handles it. You do not call Paige to negotiate through her. How long are you going to punish me?" "A boundary is not a clock, Dean." I carried the cedar box home with the recipe cards inside it. Lorna and Paige had counted 83 cards at the garage and sealed them in a clear envelope before they left. That was the sort of detail Dean used to mock me for. Now it was how we knew all 83 came home. Recovery did not begin with relief. It began with the first Saturday morning when I sat alone at my kitchen table and realized I did not know what to do with the box. I had spent weeks trying to recover it. Possession felt strangely quiet. Mom's handwriting was still there, but I could not hear the way she said, "a little flour," when she meant half a cup. I could not tell which version of the noodle recipe she used when Dad was sick, or why the card for baked beans had Aunt Lorna's name crossed out and written back in. The objects had returned. The knowledge around them was still disappearing. So I called Paige. "I have a project," I said. "Not an apology project, a work project." She arrived the next Saturday with a small audio recorder, 2 legal pads, and labels she had printed in 3 sizes because she did not know which I would prefer. We began with apple cake. Lorna read Mom's note about Dean complaining and eating 2 pieces. Then she told us Mom had originally made the cake with pears because apples were expensive that winter. Paige recorded her. I measured ingredients and deliberately did not correct the first crooked label Paige placed on the storage container. At the end of the afternoon, we had 1 recipe, 43 minutes of stories, and a cake that sank slightly in the center. It was enough. We invited relatives 1 or 2 at a time to the church fellowship room kitchen. Nobody gave speeches. They cooked. Cousin Mark remembered that Mom always hid 1 burned biscuit beneath the good ones. Lorna explained the crossed-out name on the baked bean card. She and Mom had stopped speaking for 6 months in 1982, then reconciled over the same recipe. We scanned each card. Paige cataloged who appeared in each recording and asked permission before making copies. 1 digital set went to me, 1 to Paige, and 1 to Lorna. The originals stayed in the cedar box, but the box was no longer a single point of failure. Paige did not try to earn my trust with 1 grand gesture. She came every other Saturday. When she could not come, she called the day before. She corrected file names, brought replacement batteries, and once drove back across town because she had accidentally taken Mom's card for corn pudding home in her notebook. Trust returned as a pattern. Dean made the first 6 restitution payments on time. On the 3rd month, he asked Paige whether he could come to a recording day. She told him to ask me directly. That mattered too. He called on a Tuesday evening. "I remember the stew," he said, "the one Dad liked. You can record the memory on your phone and send it to Paige." I thought maybe I could come. "Not yet. I'm doing everything on the agreement." That is repayment. It is not the same as access. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "All right." The recording arrived 2 days later. Dean described burning his thumb on the candy syrup at 14 and dropping the mixing bowl. His voice broke when he said Mom had put his hand under cold water and finished the candy without scolding him. We added the recording. We did not add a chair for him. Compassion did not require pretending the distance was gone. It meant leaving room for truthful action without surrendering the boundary that made truth possible. By spring, the estate accounting was complete. The sold items remained sold. The cut table leaf remained cut. Dean still owed restitution. Those facts did not ruin the recovery. They kept it honest. At our first family recipe supper, I set the dented mixing bowl in the middle of the table. We filled it with biscuits. Paige placed a small card beside it that read, "Evelyn Bell's Bowl. Dropped by Dean, Christmas 1982. Returned by Dean, October 2025. Still in use." I laughed when I read it. "Too much information?" she asked. "No," I said, "just enough." The first label in our archive carried the same principle. What we can prove, what we remember, and who helped carry it. For most of my life, I believed keeping peace meant making my own discomfort small. Dean counted on that. He thought shame would stop me from checking 1 payment, and that family loyalty would make Paige delete 1 message. He was wrong because neither of us needed secret power to change what happened next. I needed a bank record, a phone call, and the patience to say only what the evidence supported. Paige needed the freedom to choose truth without being claimed by either side. The bowl on my table was never proof that everything else was gone. In the end, it became proof that an ordinary object can survive a fall, a lie, and a return, and still be useful. If there is an everyday object in your family that carries someone's voice, write down the story while there is still someone who can tell it.